Theodore Geisel, better known as Dr. Seuss, probably the most famous author of all time. And why not? His stories are mostly timeless, with a distinct style and great lessons. But we're not talking about any of that. Today we're talking about the movies based on his books. Whenever anything's popular, Hollywood sees dollar signs, and Dr. Seuss is no different. But Seuss was famously restrained when it came to licensing his characters, so during his lifetime, adaptations of his books were limited to short cartoons, and it probably should have stayed that way. The first screen adaptation of a Seuss book was Horton Hears The Egg in 1942. It's a good Warner Brothers cartoon with solid gags and great animation, but way more Looney Tunes than Dr. Seuss. And the Looney Tunes weren't really made for kids, so you have suicide and sex appeal and dated references. Things I'm sure no future Dr. Seuss adaptations will have. Horton is also pink for some reason. I mean, the book was in black and white, so I guess that's okay. After this, Seuss moved to puppet tunes with the 500 Hats of Bartholomew Cubbins, Seuss's second book, which doesn't even rhyme. It's your typical children's story where nothing is in your control and everyone wants to kill you. Pretty dark for Seuss. Wasn't expecting suicide to be a recurring theme here.
And with one mighty leap, he left the services of His Majesty.
Stop motion in the 40s was rough, man.
Don't let your kids watch it!
They also did Into Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, one of the banned books, and it's somehow even more horrifying. There's also Gerald McBoing Boing. That wasn't even a book. Get that out of here. But in 1953, Dr. Seuss got the chance to write his one and only narrative feature film, The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T. It was an abject failure, and Seuss later disowned it. I don't know, I kind of liked it. It's definitely style over substance. I always assumed the reason Seuss never made any movies out of his books was because the plots are too simple, but this movie's plot isn't much more developed than in his books. I didn't care for the songs, and the kid was kind of annoying, but it looks amazing, like Dr. Seuss drawings brought to life. Not a single straight edge in sight, and they do some funky things with the perspective. I'd recommend it if only to see how batshit it gets. By the 1960s, there was this new thing called television. I think you know where this is going. In 1966, How the Grinch Stole Christmas first aired. I mean, what do you want me to say? It's a perfect adaptation. Beautifully drawn, there's some bugs and some corners have been cut, but on TV in the 1960s, animation this good was unheard of. Great narration and vocal performances, and never does it feel like they're stretching for time, despite being twice the length of the book it's based on. Oh, and it's also a simple, timeless story with a simple but timeless message. Several elements that are heavily associated with the story and would be carried over to future adaptations were introduced in this special. Elements of the Grinch's design, an increased role for Cindy Lou, and those iconic songs. As much as I love Charlie Brown and Rankin Bass, this is easily the best of the big classic animated Christmas specials. The Grinch was a big hit right out the gate, so it's no surprise it took CBS 4 years to air another Dr. Seuss special from the same team, Horton Hears A Who. We still got June Foray voicing every female character, but Boris Karloff had passed away the year before, so now we've got Hans Conried as the narrator and title character, as well as Dr. H. Hoovy, who previously played the delightfully gay title character in the 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T. This wouldn't be the last time he replaced Boris Karloff. Chuck Jones himself also voices several characters, and Pharrell Ravenscroft returns, this time with the rest of his quartet, the Mellow Men, voicing the Wickersham Brothers. Was it worth the wait? I don't like this one as much. It's still a good story, there's more to interpret than in The Grinch.
You're trying to kill free enterprise and raise the cost of pigs and dates and wreck our compound interest rates.
The animation is about as good, though more corners have been cut. They straight up recycle animation from The Grinch at some points. Wait a minute. Whoville. Is that the Grinch? The lyrics are still delightfully Seuss, but there's more songs in this one, and they're more hit or miss. It also ends on a sequel tease, weirdly enough. This team would continue making Dr. Seuss specials for years to come, if MGM's animation studio didn't close down later that year, so now production was in the hands of the Patty Freeling Enterprises, creators of the Pink Panther and ruiner of the Looney Tunes. Their first special, The Cat in the Hat, was planned at MGM, them, so Chuck Jones and much of his team would stay on the production, but they wouldn't stick around for long. Seuss was apparently dissatisfied with Jones's style, which is probably why the Patty Freeling specials are a more direct translation of Seuss's art style. Not as good as the Grinch, but I like it way more than Horton. The Cat in the Hat was so short and simple that unlike the previous specials, which were the books basically word for word just with songs thrown in, here they used the basic outline of the book as a springboard for tons of new gags and song numbers. And unlike Horton, I actually like all of the songs in this one, though they really shouldn't have let these kids sing.
He's a cat in a hat, he's a chat in a chapeau. He also is a gato in a sombrero.
Some of the most iconic bits from the book are omitted, but much effort is done to give the characters more personality. The cat is basically Bugs Bunny, and the fish is basically Daffy Duck. Oh, I'm sorry, Carlos K. Crinklebine.
The name is Crinklebine. Carlos K. Crinklebine.
Much like the Grinch, it's clear the movie took way more inspiration from this special than the book. They made a bunch of these: the Lorax, Green Eggs and Ham, Pontiful Puck, Goober Blue Highway. I actually highly recommend the latter. Seuss's unique brand of social satire is on full display.
And dear old Ching Chong Toes.
Uh-oh. They're all good, except Pontiful Puck. That one was kind of bad. They even made a follow-up to the Grinch in Halloween is Grinch Night. I say follow-up because where it takes place in the timeline is questionable. You weren't going to top the original, but it still has plenty of that Seussian charm in its writing and visuals. Halloween isn't mentioned once. They probably would have kept going if the Patty Freeling wasn't bought by Marvel in 1980 and renamed Marvel Productions, so one last special was made. And they kind of went out with a bang, it being a crossover between the Grinch and the Cat in the Hat. The Grinch Grinches the Cat in the Hat. What does Grinchin' entail? Just kind of being a nuisance. Did you know it was these two specials that got Seuss's Emmys? So with the Patty Freeling gone, who would they get next to adapt Seuss's work? Ralph Bakshi. Yes, the man behind Fritz the Cat directed a Dr. Seuss special, The Butter Battle Book. To be fair, this was shortly after his work on Mighty Mouse, The New Adventures, so I guess it made sense at the time. And watching the special, you honestly wouldn't be able to tell it was from a different team, besides maybe cruder animation. It's also one of the less good ones. I love the allegory and the ambiguous non-ending, but more so than the previous specials, it gets kind of repetitive. Who knows what the future would have held for Dr. Seuss adaptations, but in 1991, Seuss himself passed away at the age of 87. The first adaptation of Seuss's work to premiere after his death was a 90-minute live-action special on TNT in 1994, In Search of Dr. Seuss, which is a movie I can only really do justice by summarizing it beat for beat. It's a mess. A reporter named Kathy Lane goes to Dr. Seuss's house so she can write an article about him, where she's greeted by the Cat in the Hat, played by Matt Frewer. And forget Mike Myers or Martin Short, this is the most annoying version of the character.
Dr. Seuss. What? No.
Cute Dr. T reference, though. They read The Sneetches, accompanied by animation from Dr. Seuss on the Loose, which allows the cat to inform her how Seuss experienced prejudice firsthand, being a child of German descent during World War I. She then meets Christopher Lloyd, playing Mr. Hunch from the Dr. Seuss classic Hunches and Bunches, who tells her more about Seuss's childhood, leading to a live-action reenactment of McGilligan's Pool, another one of the banned books. They notably omit the part that got it pulled. We then randomly transition to a reading of Horton Hatches the Egg, accompanied by the animation from the Warner Brothers cartoon, but for some reason redubbed entirely by Frank Welker, which does allow him to show his impressive vocal range. There's a reason he's the most prolific live-in voice actor.
Would you like to sit on the egg in my nest?
Me on your egg? Why, it doesn't make sense. Horton the elephant's up in a tree.
Well, take him away. Why, he's terribly funny.
We'll sell him back home to a circus for money.
My gracious. Good heavens, my word. It's something brand new. It's an elephant boy.
Its placement in this special feels very random, as we then go back to a chronological account of Seuss's life starting in the 20s. Kathy running into ad execs played by David Paymer and Andrea Martin, who are also very annoying. They tell her about Seuss's advertising career leading up to his first book, and to think that I saw it on Mulberry Street, which is sort of reenacted with a child actor playing the book's protagonist, forming his story with her, accompanied by animation from the puppet tune. The Chinese caricature is notably omitted, but not the Raja, which, to be fair, while questionable, is probably not as bad, and the former was even worse than the original print, which, if they were gonna change stuff, makes you wonder why they didn't change more instead of straight up pulling it. I mean, I'm against both, but I digress. A cop played by Patrick Stewart explains to her Seuss's difficulty in getting his first book published. The cat comes back and there's some weird sexual tension.
Well, you were with Mulvaney.
Yes, and he was lovely.
Did he do his famous revolving door trick?
Yes, I found it quite exhilarating.
Oh, really? It was mine, originally, you know.
Oh, was it? Now, don't be jealous.
The cat introduces her to Seuss's political cartoons during World War II, and she meets a radio voiced by Billy Crystal. And get this, more weird sexual tension.
Okay, Dollface.
Yeah?
Yeah, 'cause I like you. Maybe later I'll show you my transmitter.
He introduces a documentary short written by Seuss called Hitler Lives, once again redubbed by Frank Welker.
War with Germany ends in victory. Victory leads to peace.
And it's all very interesting, but to me contributes to this movie feeling confused and unfocused. It's so jarring in the middle of this wacky special recapping some of Dr. Seuss's more famous children's stories to have all this talk of Nazis. They also conveniently ignore Seuss's anti-Japanese racism during World War II, even though that could have been an actually organic transition to the more famous Horton story, Horton Hears A Who, since that book represents his change of heart after the war. Still not as uncomfortable as them bringing up how hard the death of his first wife was for him while neglecting to elaborate on the circumstances surrounding her death. We get a bizarre gospel rendition of Yertle the Turtle, followed by Robin Williams reading The Cat in the Hat to his daughter Zelda, and the daughter of Mrs. Doubtfire director Chris Columbus, Eleanor Columbus, which is as entertaining as it sounds. Matt Frewer then gives the worst rendition of the Egg song you've ever heard.
I frequently think, every now and then, of the glorious fruits of the noble hen.
Introducing a bizarre reenactment of the story. Kathy being stalked by an army of Sam-I-Ams, voiced by Howie Mandel doing his Bobby's World voice.
Would you like them in a house? Would you like them with a mouse?
We then break the chronology by going over the Grinch, because you have to go over the Grinch.
Until a friend, Audrey, suggested.
Yeah, just friends.
A what?
Hairball.
Hairball.
Was Mike Myers' cat based on this?
Hairball.
We then get the Lorax, because you have to have the Lorax. And wait a minute, you can't show her planting the seed. That ruins the ambiguous ending. Oh well, at least I'll never do that again. Then the Butter Battle book. And fittingly for the finale, Seuss's last book, Oh, the Places You'll Go, with more sexual tension.
But that's not for you.
By George, I think you're right.
Pas de deux.
I'd love to.
They really should have picked one lane for this, either be a serious biography of Dr. Seuss or a wacky greatest hits compilation. Instead they try to do both, and it's just too much. In the first third I was annoyed, in the middle I was actually entertained, and by the end I was just bored. It didn't need to be 90 minutes. There was one last special released in 1995, Daisy Head Maisie, based on a book that was only completed after Dr. Seuss's death. And yep, it sure does feel like a first draft of a story that was hastily completed. The actual plot doesn't kick in until 16 minutes in, and the message feels inconsistent with what's shown before that point. Very half-assed and tacked on. The songs are just filler, and they tweaked the Dr. Seuss art style just enough to look completely off. Now for what this video is actually supposed to be about, movies based on specific Dr. Seuss books. In 1998, the film rights to The Grinch were sold to Universal, releasing in 2000, and the world was never the same. It's been seen by many as a Christmas classic, with many watching it every year along with the animated special. And yeah, I'm one of those people. But I can see why it rubbed some people the wrong way. Stretching out a picture book to a 25-minute special is one thing, but stretching it out to a full-length movie probably shouldn't have even been attempted. The more successful tend to be very loose, and also don't have to deal with already having a beloved screen adaptation to be compared to. But if they were gonna do it, the changes
here makes sense. They give the Grinch a backstory, something he absolutely does not need, especially when his lack of backstory is so iconic that both movie adaptations still keep this line.
The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now please, don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason.
No one quite knows the reason.
But sure, he was bullied on Christmas. Why not? Though additionally, they make the Grinch kind of right. The Grinch is offended by Christmas, not just because of all the noise, but because of the commercialism. Because in this movie, Christmas in Whoville is superficial. They've lost sight of the true meaning as well. Which, while a far cry from the book and the special, where they're portrayed as pure beings representing the true spirit of Christmas, is more realistic and relatable for this expanded, modernized retelling. And they still learn their lesson and have that nice moment, so I don't think it's a big deal. Jim Carrey is honestly not bad at all as the Grinch. He makes the character his own, funny and menacing. There are a few times where they should have reeled him in a little bit, but I don't really fault him for that. Same with the comedy. A lot of it is funny, but some of the quips, and especially the more crude humor, falls flat for me. In some scenes you can tell they just rolled the camera and let Jim Carrey go wild, and it gets tiring. This movie looks good for the most part. Not as good as Dr. T. You aren't going to get anything that visually creative without the Doctor himself at the helm. But this was back when cartoon adaptations actually tried to accurately replicate the visual style instead of trying to look as realistic as possible, and before CG came in and ruined everything. The Who's are still creepy though. This movie was highly divisive amongst critics, but made a buttload of money. The only logical next step was a movie based on Seuss's other most popular creation. This one didn't go over as well. For the longest time, this movie was despised by all, but in more recent years, it's gained a bit of a cult following, mostly among those who grew up with it, which includes me. Much like the special, really only the basic outline of the book is intact, and more so than the Grinch, all the stuff they add to extend the runtime feels like it only serves to make the plot unnecessarily convoluted. The house can't be a mess, not just because no one wants their house to be a mess, but because the mom is hosting an office party there, and her boss is a neat freak, Mr. Humberflube, played by Sean Hayes, who gives a memorable performance to say the least.
You're fired!
And also voices the fish, weirdly enough. They give the kids distinct personalities in this movie, representing the two extremes. The boy, now named Conrad, being the rule-breaking one, and Sally being a control freak, which isn't a bad idea, but ultimately makes the fish redundant. But he was one of the only characters in the book, so you've gotta include him. And in the cartoon, they seem to be having fun up till the end. Here they seem stressed out 90% of the time. The mom hires a babysitter, who's mostly used as a prop for physical comedy involving her weight and jokes about her race.
You tell them, Guai-Jiang. No more big government.
Considering what they did with the Grinch, it's surprising they don't give the cat a backstory in this. It looks like that's what they're doing in the upcoming animated movie. But honestly, I'm glad they didn't, because it just makes it funnier. The fact that the cat in this is a completely enigmatic magical being who can seemingly do whatever he wants and has everything under his control. The prosthetics don't look as bad as a lot of people say, but definitely worse than the Grinch. I think the big problem is that you can make out the shape of Mike Myers' face. Nostalgia Critic actually made a pretty good comparison.
Even the costume just looks like a cheap cutout you stick your face into. Except it's being worn by one of the Wayans brothers from White Chicks.
Alec Baldwin is also here as the mom's deadbeat boyfriend who wants to get Conrad sent to military school. A completely unnecessary addition, but again, I can't complain because Alec Baldwin is actually really funny here, and is the only actor I know of who actually stood by the movie after it bombed. This movie is the directorial debut of Bo Welsh, previously a production designer who worked with Tim Burton, which is apparent by the look of this movie. Way more Burton than Seuss. Very geometric, which is the opposite of Seuss. And it doesn't have the most appealing color palette and way more crappy CG. But for me, that's just part of the charm, the aesthetic of the time. Even if I think that a movie that limited itself to the book's color palette could actually be very interesting. Why couldn't we have gotten the ride at Universal Studios? Cha-ching! This movie really shouldn't have killed Bo Welsh's career. Most of the problems aren't his fault. On an objective level, this movie is probably worse than The Grinch, Grinch, way messier, a worse adaptation, and less appealing to look at, but I personally prefer it over The Grinch just because I find it way funnier. This movie is tailor-made to appeal to my stupid sense of humor, and I can't bring myself to get mad at a movie where the people in charge clearly realized it was a stupid idea and just said, screw it, let's have fun with it. And we're allowed to because The Grinch was such a big hit. This one, not as much though, as it only made $133 million on a $109 million budget, and unlike The Grinch, was absolutely destroyed by critics, leading Seuss's widow, Audrey, to swear off allowing more live-action adaptations of his work. I'm sure these movies will fare much better in animation. These movies have been written off as a disgrace to Seuss's work, but honestly, they have a chaotic energy that, to me at least, feels perfectly in the spirit of Seuss. And after watching Seuss's own attempt at a feature film, it gives me a bigger appreciation for them. Dr. T looks better and beats them in terms of being insane, but these movies have tighter scripts. Yes, even the cat. And don't pad their runtime with tiring song numbers. I get why many like The Grinch but not the cat, but for me, they're about on par. In 2005, Blue Sky Studios acquired the rights to adapt Horton Hears A Who for a 2008 release. Many refer to this as the only good Dr. Seuss movie, or at least the best one, to which I say, nah, this movie's bland as hell. I always forget this one exists. I think because it's this weird transitional movie. Sandwiched between the live-action duology and the Illumination duology, you've got this one-sole Blue Sky movie. Jim Carrey once again plays the title character and isn't funny in this movie. Nothing is funny. They split off the character of Dr. H. Hoovy into the mayor, originally from the book, and Dr. Mary Lou LaRue, the latter of which is a rather pointless inclusion, but anything to get an extra celebrity on the poster. The mayor having 99 daughters, and one emo son named Jojo, because we gotta make use of the few named characters from the book. The mayor wants Jojo to follow in the footsteps of him and his ancestors, but Jojo has his own dreams. Meanwhile, the Who City Council writes off the mayor's claims of an elephant in the sky to maintain order. Both subplots are incredibly underdeveloped and underwhelming. The animation is good on a technical level and a good translation of Dr. Seuss's style to 3D. I just don't know how well his style translates to 3D. I don't know, there's something about the eyes and the teeth that I don't like. There's an anime part. At the end they all sing I Can't Fight This Feeling. I actually wish this movie had more dumb stuff like that because those were the rare moments I actually felt things. I knew both those things ahead of time and still wasn't prepared. This movie is so bland and inoffensive that I'm kind of offended. Kind of reminds me of a certain other studio. While working on Horton, Audrey Geisel hit it off with then president of 20th Century Fox Animation, Chris Meledandri. I think you know what that means. Dr. Seuss movies would now be handled by Illumination. First was the Lorax in 2012. I love and hate this movie at the same time. The frame story is complete BS. The boy, now named Ted, lives in Fneedville, a corporatocratic police state where everything is fake, and has a crush on Audrey. Get it? Who appears much older than him and is inexplicably fascinated by trees. So with guidance from his cool grandma, played by Betty White, Ted seeks out the Once-Ler, who tells him the tale of what happened to the trees. Completely dumb and generic, like an infinitely worse version of WALL-E. It'd be bad enough if it was just at the beginning, but they also interrupt the Lorax story twice in the middle for no good reason. And most insulting, they throw away the book's ambiguous ending in favor of actually showing Ted planting the seed. Ted gets the girl. The problems with the environment are solved by throwing out one bad apple and singing. Even the Once-Ler gets a happy ending because God forbid we challenge kids. But when it's actually the story of the Lorax, it's not that bad. Yeah, there's some terrible comic relief with the woodland creatures and the Once-Ler's family, and seriously, showing the Once-Ler's face. But the Lorax and Once-Ler themselves are actually fairly likable here, and Danny DeVito and Ed Helms give good voice performances. The one actually redeeming factor of the frame story is Ted's grandma, even if this skateboarding grandma is plagiarized from Hoodwinked. Besides that, the movie's unapologetic awfulness is kind of funny. O'Hare in particular. He's not at all a funny character, but the fact they inserted such a generic, one-dimensional corporate villain into the movie makes me laugh. A lot of my hesitation in calling this movie bad is that I just have way too fond memories of it. Not of the movie itself, but the memes. The songs themselves aren't great. In fact, How Bad Can I Be is probably the worst due to the obnoxious, repetitive chorus. Plus, considering how much this movie is clearly stretching for time, I question the decision to condense the Once-Ler's descent into greed into one 3-minute musical number. It's a shame. Of all the Dr. Seuss books, the Lorax is one that actually had potential for a movie. Potential they almost met, if only Illumination had allowed. Still, unlike all other Illumination movies, minus Despicable Me, it actually left a lasting impact and actually made me feel something, which is a good transition for our next movie. In 2018, Illumination released their version of The Grinch. I friggin' hate this movie. Benedict Cumberbatch voices the titular character this time, but instead of doing his natural voice, which might actually fit, in an American accent and a high-pitched nasal tone that sounds horrible. This Grinch isn't mean to anyone outside of the beginning, and even that reminds me more of Despicable Me than anything. You're a mean one Mr. Grinch plays over him getting ready in the morning, before he's done anything mean. He's actually far too nice. He's nice to Max, he goes down to get his groceries. Most of the movie is preparing to steal Christmas, and none of it is particularly funny or interesting. Even stealing Christmas isn't funny or interesting. But it's Illumination, so there's plenty of movement. Instead of just having Max, the Grinch gets an actual reindeer, but then he lets the reindeer go and has Max pull the sleigh anyway. He comes back and saves him in the end, but the other versions didn't need that. Cindy Lou Who gets a subplot once again, but instead of anything interesting, it's that her mom is overworked, and she wants to trap Santa to ask him to make her mom less overworked. And she has a bunch of friends who are just there for merchandise. Horton and Lorax at least looked like Seuss. This looks like crap. Pharrell sucks at narration. There's a rap version of You're a Mean One, and it's sounds like crap. Grinch's backstory is crap. Kenan Thompson is in this movie and isn't funny or necessary. Nothing is funny. Screw this movie. So, what have we learned? Dr. Seuss books probably shouldn't be made into movies. But was live action the problem? No. Many of the live-action movies' problems still exist in the animated ones, but alas, these probably won't stop anytime soon. In 2022, there was The Mean One, a horror parody of The Grinch, but that's unofficial, so that doesn't count. Coming in 2026 is an animated Cat in the Hat from Warner Brothers, and it looks awful. But of course, they're already planning Oh, the Places You'll Go, The Cat in the Hat Comes Back, and Thing 1 and Thing 2. If I had to rank these movies worst to best, well, you can probably already guess, but Grinch, Horton, Lorax, Cat in the Hat, Grinch, and number 1 is Green Eggs and Ham. What, you don't remember that one?
That's Sam I Am. That's Sam I Am. I do not like that Sam I Am.
Sam I Am is portrayed as the homicidal maniac he truly is.
I do so like green eggs and ham. Thank you, Sam I Am.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, I'm the Curtain Koala, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.